Good evening, everyone. We'll start the meeting by acknowledging, with an acknowledgement of country and acknowledge the continuing connection of Aboriginal people to country, culture and community, including traditional custodians of this land, the Wadundee and Kaniang people of the Noongar Nation, paying respects to elders past and present. And we'll declare the meeting open at 5:01 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and digitally recorded in accordance with the Council Policy EM-CP2. Members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed without the permission of the chairperson. Whilst every endeavour has been made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, loud comments or noises may be picked up on the recording. Now, the councillors present, to my right is Deputy President Lisa Glover, and to my left, Councillor John Bailey, Councillor Alexis Davey, Councillor Peter Gubler, Councillor Anita Lindeman, Councillor Grant Patrick and Councillor Diana Shand. The staff present to my left is Chief Executive Officer Dr Gary Hunt. To my right, Acting Director of Finance Corporate Tim Lynch. Further to my right, Director of Operations Ross Marshall. On my far left is Lauren Clifford, Manager of Corporate Services, assisted by Samantha McFarquhar, Administration for Corporate Services. And sitting in the gallery, we have Belinda Richards, Manager of Financial Services. We have Michelle Dennis, Manager of Development Services, and Cecilia Muller, Principal Planning Officer. And welcome to everybody else in the public gallery. You're more than welcome. And I welcome also those participating via live stream. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that we have Councillor Anne Mitchell attending via Teams. We have no apologies for tonight. When we get to item 2.2 on the agenda, there are no approved leaves of absences. Do we have any coming for the ordinary council meeting? No. There are no announcements from myself. And item 4, declarations of interest. We have a declaration of interest from Councillor Peter Gubler, because the applicant is known to me from my role. Oh no, it's yours. Do we have yours, Councillor Gubler?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's item number 9.2.5, just with the group valuations of land policy. Just we've got multiple land groups. So.
Thank you.
Sorry, I should have declared as well. I'm sorry.
So there's two declarations of interest for 9.1.5. Is it, Mr. Councillor Gubler? 9.2.5. Sorry. Thank you. Is that sufficient? Yeah. And Councillor Mitchell, you'll need to fill out a form for us, please.
I shall. I'll send it in straight away.
Thank you. We have a third declaration of interest from CEO Hunt, because item 9.1.1, where the applicant is known to me from my role as CEO in the City of Perth, and I left the role in March 2002. Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest? Thank you. Item 5, public question time. Item 5.1, responses to previous public questions that were taken on notice. There are none. Public question time tonight at 5.2 is not applicable to the agenda briefing. Similarly, item 6.1, item 6.2, petitions and presentations, and item 6.3, deputations, and items all of those are not applicable tonight. Agenda briefings are open to the public to attend and observe. However, questions, deputations or petitions are to be presented to the council meeting. Item 6.4, delegates' reports. There are none. Which brings us to item 7, confirmation of minutes. Do councillors have any questions for item 7.1, ordinary council meeting held on the 22nd of May 2024, around those minutes? No? Do councillors have any questions for item 7.2 for the special council meeting held on the 15th of May 2024? Councillor Davey?
Sorry, it's regarding the Audit and Risk Committee, not that one.
Okay. Reports of committees at item 8. Item 8.1, the Local Emergency Management Committee meeting held on the 14th of May 2024. Do councillors have any questions? Item 8.2, the Audit and Risk Management Committee meeting held on the 21st of May 24. Councillor Davey?
Yeah, just a minor correction. I'm shown as an apology for the meeting. However, I didn't know the meeting was being held, so I did not actually send in my apologies. I was absent.
Thank you, Councillor Davey.
If I can just add, if someone hasn't turned up to a meeting, we would normally record an apology, but if you don't want it recorded, that's fine.
Moving on to item 9, reports of officers. Item 9.1, Director of Operations. Item 9.1.1 is a development application, extractive industry, lots 130 and 3671, Donnybrook Boyup Road in Yabberup. That's Yabberup needs a spell check there. Yabberup. Okay. Director of Operations, Roscoe, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam President, if I may. And I think this report does deserve an introduction. Essentially, this is the same application as presented to Council Workshop 15th of May this year and the draft report issued 28th of May this year. Since this information has been presented to Council, the applicant has provided an amendment. This amendment is documented in the current report and depicted in figures 2 and 3. However, for your convenience, Sam, could you swing that slide up? I just thought I'd highlight the change because it may look insignificant on plan, but it is quite significant when you look at the contours. So it's just that item, that area there. So parcels, what was originally parcel 7 or extractive area 7, has been taken out of the application. And in sense, what has also occurred obviously is lot 3671 is now not applicable to the application. It's only lot 130. Again, that was just to make it easy for everyone to see. So yes, the proposal was originally over the 2 lots and divided into 7 extraction stages of approximately 2-ish hectares, so it ranged from 2 to 2.4. The revised proposal is lot 130 only, with a balance of 6 extraction stages remaining. The applicant removed the proposed extraction stage previously indicated on lot 3671 and tailored this application to take into account the experience gained from the previous application for the adjoining extractive industry and to directly address submissions received for this application. The proposed conditions for approval include, but are not limited to, the following: 5-year term and 6 extraction stages with mandatory audits every 12 months for condition compliance and annual licence renewal. These audits are carried out by the Shire officers to ensure compliance prior to the issue of the extractive industry licence renewal for the next 12-month period. Dust management is addressed with crushing and screening limited to winter season only and water suppression. Weed and dieback management with requirements for declared weeds, reduction of dieback spread area and the inclusion of a 10-metre buffer or exclusion zone to protect the adjacent native vegetation. Fire management will be in accordance with the local laws and the Bushfire Act. Stormwater management is in accordance with the attached water management plan, local laws and the conditions as noted. Noise management is conditioned as per the attached noise management plan, the noise environmental protection regulations and mandatory reporting to the Shire every 3 months in accordance with the complaint register annexure. Noise impact is further reduced by limiting crushing and screening to the winter season only, and just an observation, typically when our windows and doors are closed, and with the condition that the same works are not carried out simultaneously on the adjacent extraction licence for Lot 10. Rehabilitation and pit closure are required to be carried out in accordance with the Shire's local laws and limited to the proposed staging, allowing for dovetailing from one stage to the next. So, for example, only 2 stages will have activity at one time. Security of $20,000 in the form of cash or an unconditional bank guarantee must be provided by the applicant to safeguard the required measures. Operating hours are limited to weekdays, except public holidays. Truck movements are isolated to hours outside the bus route periods, and they must not use Chapman Road, and the crossover must be upgraded. Appropriate insurances, safety information and demarcation for the proposed extraction area must be in place ahead of commencement of any works. Additional advice notes are applicable. These are primarily to govern the issue of the extraction industry licence that is subject to the separate application as per section B of the executive recommendation. The information contained within this report for the development application is substantial and responsive to the current submissions and comparable approvals. The development application was lodged with the Shire last year with a statutory approval period extending to June 2024, so this month, by mutual consent of the applicant and the Shire's officers. For clarity, the statutory approval period has lapsed. However, the applicant has been supportive of the process for the report to be presented to Council this month. If required, the proposed site is available for inspection by Council this Friday morning, if you're interested. And it's also just been brought to my attention that attachment 9.1.1 in brackets 1.8, the Agonis report, is actually for the adjoining extractive industry licence, so apologies for that. We'll get the updated report and we'll have that sent to you by Friday. So, happy to take any questions, Madam President.
Thank you. Director of Operations, Councillor Patrick.
Just one, if I may. The applicants removed the application or amended the application to remove the lot 3671, partially based on addressing feedback from the community. Do you know specifically what their, which aspects of the community complaints removing that will address? So will it reduce, visual impact or, traffic, or what is it actually that removing that will address? Do you know?
If I may, Madam President, primarily visual.
Thank you. Councillor Lindeman.
Yeah, thanks. What time on Friday morning, and are you meeting at Yabrap Hall or in front of the property?
From what I understand, we're at your discretion. So please, if you have a preference, please let us know. But any time, I guess, in reasonable hours, so sociable hours, it says Friday morning. So.
Thank you. Councillor Shand.
As you can imagine, I have many. I've already sent 17 in, which I've had some responses to, but I'm sorry, I'm still not quite satisfied that we're meeting the original conditions on the first application. And I'll refer to, seeing as this one spins off that one, in relation to the conditions, there was a suggestion that there be auditing and ongoing compliance and monitoring on a quarterly basis. Where is that in the second document?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Just for clarity, when you say the second document, Councillor Shand?
Well, the second application. So the first application, my understanding is, provides the foundation for the second one in the conditions. So the conditions of the first one, which is 18, condition 16 and 17, and it talks about there being suitable reporting every 3 months. The data and results of the on-site monitoring, the copy of complaints register and any other information as deemed necessary. I don't see that in the second one. So,
Thank you for clarifying. So, Councillor Shan, the register for the complaints is attachment 9, which is 9.1.1 in brackets 1.9.
yeah,
So I'll just go to that. So that complaint register, it's a requirement for the applicant to complete that complaints register on receipt of a complaint for this applicable area and provide the details of, as you can see, so the contact details for the person who made the complaint, date and time, the details of the complaint, so what the cause or impact was, impact. And then they also have to detail the actions that they were taken to rectify the complaint. And this register must be sent to the Shire every 3 months.
yeah, I understand it's a complaints register, but I'm talking about ongoing compliance and monitoring as a subject in and of itself from the first document in relation to the first. So the Commissioner's resolution, council resolutions.
Sorry,
Yeah.
this is a separate application, so...
Yeah, but it forms the basis of the conditions that have been set into the second one. That's my understanding.
CEO, could you please give me some clarification on that?
Thank you, Councillor Shand.
I'm not quite sure what you're saying. Each individual planning application or development application has to be judged and assessed on what is presented. The fact that there might have been another development application on the site doesn't relate to this application. This is a separate application.
Well, I beg to differ because the second one has references to the first one. So where do we sit with that? Because the second one spins off the first one. Lot 3671 is referred to in this document as being dropped because of Aboriginal heritage applications. So we've also got some conflict in the information. So I'm just trying to ascertain why we wouldn't have ongoing compliance and monitoring the same as the first application.
Thank you, Councillor Shand.
Oh, okay. I better understand what you're saying. So you're asking us to consider that a condition be added that says there will be ongoing compliance every 3 months? Is that the basis?
Correct. If they're going to be working at the same time, surely the same conditions apply.
Thank you, Councillor
Okay,
Shand.
we'll take that question on notice and provide an answer.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
I had a question along the same lines. So given that the annual renewal seems to be in December, whereas the bulk of the activities and the risks seem to be in winter, so I was worried about the seasonal nature of the works. So was looking for some indication from the Shire whether that auditing activity or the compliance activities would be undertaken when you've got the dieback, the water management, the rehab work and the crushing and screening work happening in winter.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. The auditing is carried out annually. So does that...
The timing of the auditing, so is the timing of the auditing going to coincide with the end of the calendar year when the renewals typically happen, or is the auditing going to coincide with the peak in activity and peak in risk and compliance?
It'll probably be a little bit more organic in the sense that the auditing was 12 months from when the extractive industry licence is issued. So it's a bit hard to answer your question, to be honest. In saying that, we could have a look at a condition that we do that. So it's something we could just condition that it does happen at a particular time of the year. But we just have to be considerate of the fact that that may mean the officer has to go twice. So, and there wouldn't be a cost for the in-between visit.
Thank you, Director of Operations. CEO Hunt?
Just picking up the point from Councillor Davey, we'll review to see how that might be conditioned, that the date of the annual review takes to account the climatic conditions relevant to the site. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Through the Chair to the Director of Operations, one of the concerns here on page 31 is obviously the noise, and that in response the applicant has noted that monitoring will take place for different aspects of the proposal. What type of monitoring will take place? And then it follows on, in the case of the development approval, the conditions ongoing compliance is the responsibility of the applicant landowner to manage during the life of the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Director of Operations.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam President. Councillor Bailey, if you don't mind, I'll take the question on notice because I think it requires a bit of research to actually give you quite a decent answer. So we'll take that on notice if that's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Glover.
My question is in regard to attachment 1.1.1 brackets 1.6, which is about the dieback. My understanding of spread of dieback is it's more prevalent, or it's harder to address in the winter months because of the fact that the dirt and the way that it's carried. It's harder to clean vehicles in the winter months because of the mud and the way it sticks onto the vehicles as well. But then it's saying that a lot of the activity is going to happen over the winter months as well, because that way, you know, windows are closed and whatnot too. But has there been any understanding around the spread and actually the science in the spread of dieback, apart from this brochure that has come here in line with this, and who's monitoring truck movements in the winter months when dieback is most likely going to be spread and harder to contain because of the mud?
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councillor Glover, for your question. I could give you a half an answer. I'm not prepared to do that because I don't think that would be fair. So I'll take your question on notice. Thank you.
Can I just ask a little bit more about that brochure too? And who is going to be the person, or who is responsible for ensuring that dieback-free water is being used? Who monitors that, and how is that recorded to ensure that that's actually happening? I just find there's a lot of monitoring here.
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
That one's easier to answer. That is the responsibility of the applicant.
Councillor Glover.
Is there a log on that? How do we evidence that that's happened and that's not, you know, it's kind of like the, it's asking them to monitor themselves, and are we overseeing that in any way, or is there another government department like DEWA or something like that that's actually overseeing that as well?
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
Thank you, Madam President. So just to clarify, and I will take this question on notice, you're asking really that data or that information, who's it collected by and who basically ensures it's compliant?
Verifies
so data
it.
collection and verification. Yeah.
Councillor Patrick.
I'm not sure if I'm stealing your question, so do you want to ask your question first that I know
Okay.
that you've got? Because I think I'm on a similar...
My question is regarding zoning, and I need some help to understand the zoning and the DEPA, the Department of Primary Industries response. What my take is that this land is Zone Priority Agriculture A, and as such, DEPA has rejected the proposal. So my understanding is that zoning is given to land that we want to set aside and preserve to support intensive crop or orchard or viticulture. And my next level of understanding is that this extraction process, because it's an A zoning, has to be approved by the local government, but it will irreversibly change the soil structure and will no longer be able to produce crops or orchards or vineyards. So my understanding of DEPA is that they're rejecting it based on the fact that we can never return it. We're actually degrading the soil for future generations. So it appears that this is against the purpose of the zoning. And then my next logical progression is, does this then change the zoning if it's no longer able to be used for intensive agriculture? Does this change the zoning to general agriculture? In which case, then we're opening it up to a lot of other, if you look at that table of in our LPS 7 planning document, the general agriculture opens it up for a lot more opportunity of development as camping, accommodation and whatever, because it's no longer primary agriculture. So I'm kind of, but then I understand that, I don't understand, sorry, the full gamut of approvals and where DEPA fits within that. But it says to me that we're diminishing soil, limited soil. When I looked at the map of all the areas that are priority zoned in our shire, and I don't even understand what percentage of this we're giving up of our priority agricultural land. Is that a long question? Sorry.
Thank you, Madam President, I think. That's a bit to unpack. The land, and at some point in time I'll probably have to call my principal planner, but I looked into this myself today, and I also had a look at page 25 where, and I wouldn't mind just sort of addressing that page to you because it's a bit easier to look at it as well. In particular, on page 25, halfway down item B, the extraction of the gravel resource will not impact the ability of the land or surrounding area to be continued to be used for agriculture. So DEPA does not support the proposal and has indicated that it is doubtful that the rehabilitated soil will be able to support vineyards to the same extent that it currently does. The applicant actually intends to return the land to pasture instead.
And that is not priority though, is it? That's not a priority, that's a general agricultural usage, from what I could understand, but I may be wrong. It's probably a very simple response that I don't understand.
I think I'll call the principal planner up if that's okay, because that falls into the zoning requirement. So, the zoning won't change, but... Do you want to go there?
Hello. Thank you. I'll just put it in here. There we go. Oh, okay, I'll just hold it. Yes, thank you. To answer the question about the zoning, Madam President, the zoning is not going to change. It will remain priority agriculture. What I do want to mention as well as, or add to what Roscoe has said, is that information that we've received when the local planning strategy was referred to the Department of Planning, originally it was suggested or recommended by officers to make extractive industries or ex-use in the priority agricultural zone. The department actually came back to us and said, we cannot do that because it goes against state planning policies. We can't make the extraction of
an extractive industry and ex-use in the priority agricultural zone because it goes against State Planning Policy 2.4, which requires basic raw materials and its regional importance to be considered at the earliest stages of the planning process. It's also not in line with Planning Policy 2.5, further regard to the extraction of basic raw materials as primary production along with other farming activities. In other words, under State Planning Policy 2.5, and I've got a copy here as well if someone would like to have a look at that after this meeting. If you look at the word and the terms and the definitions in this policy, primary production actually includes the extraction of basic raw materials. So for those reasons, it is seen as a very important product that needs to be extracted, and it is a use that we can consider in the priority agricultural zone. It is an A use, which means that we do need to refer it to various agencies and consider their submissions and comments, and include that in our recommendation, and council need to consider that then when you look at this report and consider the proposal. But it will go against the policies to make it a use that we cannot consider, and it is seen as primary production.
And does it? You said it doesn't change the priority agriculture rating zone. Yeah.
In reading the information, it does appear that it changes the soil condition, but it doesn't change the zoning of the land.
Right.
There may be other uses that we can consider in the priority agricultural zone. They're usually very similar to general agricultural activities, but that is what the zoning allows us, and there isn't a change because of the fact that the soil is sorry.
Okay, so the DPER is only a component of the total. Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey?
Was DPERD provided with the agronomist report?
I do not, no, not in this case, no.
Why not?
I suppose the planning process doesn't really allow for us to go back and provide further information. The timeframes are such that usually we request, we have the application, we have timeframes in which we can ask further information from the applicant. I suppose when this proposal was advertised earlier in the year, last year, that report was not available at that point. The reports was only done closer to the time when the commissioner considered the other proposal, and I think that's why we got the confusion with the test pits, which we've picked up now recently, and that's why the applicant is going to provide us with the correct report to replace in the attachments as Ross indicated.
Councillor Davey?
As a follow-up to that, so this new application has a supporting agronomist report and was sent to DPERD without that supporting report? Or are we relying on the previous referral to DPERD?
No. So this, my understanding is that this report was received, the agronomist report was received in September, and when we initially referred it to DPERD, there wasn't a report with it. That's my
So we have not referred it to DPERD with this, we have not referred the new application to DPERD. We're relying on the old application?
No, to clarify through you, Madam President, this application was separately referred to DPERD, but without the agronomist report.
Thank you. Councillor Davey, did you want to reply?
Sorry, earlier in the discussion, it was stated that this was a separate development application to the one that was previously lodged. But has this separate development application, with its supporting reports, been sent to those government departments?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So we had the agronomist report in September, and when did we refer it to DPIRD and get the feedback?
So I can confirm that this application was advertised and referred early last year, round about, I think it's in the report, it's May, I think March, or let me just see quickly.
Wasn't that the first application? The first application?
No, the first application was separately advertised.
Just a moment.
If I
Let's
may,
just-
the application that is in front of council today was actually the first one that we received. The application that was approved by council commissioner last year was the second application. So the second application actually got approved by council with conditions first, if that makes sense.
Other way round.
Sorry.
Other way round. The first one approved by the Commissioner, this is a separate application, and this is the one that's before the council. I'm getting
That's-
nods from the others as I say it.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam,
Can I just have that clarified?
I got the numbers wrong, Paul.
Okay, can I just ask you to restate that so that we're all clear about the sequence?
I'll get. I'm relating to information being passed to me. I haven't assessed it, but Cecilia has done the whole application, so she should respond to the question.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cecilia.
yeah.
Just give
So-
us the sequence. of
Yes,
approvals.
so the first application, if you look at the date of that application and the number, it is P22022. So that was the first application that was dealt with, and as we've showed on the maps, it was in that area, but it was separately. It's to the west of where we are looking at now. That application was dealt with separately. Then in February last year, 2023, this application was received and it was advertised separately to the adjoining neighbours within, or affected neighbours within 2 kilometres, and the application was referred separately to all the agencies. Yeah, I can confirm that.
Prior to the agronomist report being available?
Yes, yes.
So DPIRD have not received it because it was not available?
No, I do not recall any comment from DPIRD on that report in this report that I've provided.
No, it's not there, no.
No.
Now, following on from that, Councillor Davey, are you asking, can we forward the agronomist's report to DPIRD? Is there an opportunity?
So my line of questioning comes from the fact that councillors are being required to make a decision on the land capability based on an agronomist report that has not been reviewed by the subject matter expert department, which rejected the initial application. So I was trying to find out whether the department who initially rejected the application was given this additional information and given an opportunity to then change their recommendation, or whether it satisfied them.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davey.
Okay.
Questions, Karen?
We will ascertain the opportunity for the agronomist report to be sent. Can I just correct? DPIRD can't reject it. They can make comment. We just need to be careful of the terminology. But we will follow up on the issue of the agronomist report and whether it would have made any difference to the situation.
Thank you. Councillor Lindeman, then I'll go Councillor Bailey.
Through the chair, I just wanted to ask, do we have a shortage of gravel available within the Shire?
Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. I can't quantifiably answer that. All I can say is that from an industry point of view, there is a shortage because of the other major projects that are happening, but I can't give you any data on that.
Thank you, Director of Operations. Councillor Bailey.
Through the chair, to the town planner, just seeking clarification on page 41. It looks good. We've got the wall buns, so the crusher and dozer are going to be operating behind that. How are they mining the gravel?
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Director of Operations.
If I may, Madam President, I'll redirect that to the Principal Planner.
Thank you.
My understanding is that they first remove the topsoil and they push that to the boundaries. There is a plan that shows the location of where the topsoil will be stockpiled. It's figure 8. And then they will rip the land and put the big stones or the big rocks through a crusher. And as they do that, they will create those stockpiles, the product stockpiles, and have the crusher behind that to screen the all the noise impacts. That was their intent.
So I understand that will help some of the noise, but you're still going to have a D9 or whatever you're going to have ripping the country in open air, not behind a bun at all. And then the crusher is behind the bun, so the dozer feeds the crusher, I understand that. But there's still a lot of time out in the paddock with the ripper. So while this looks good, and it will help mitigate, it's not, it's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
We're just asking questions today, Councillor Bailey. We can't pass comment. Councillor Shand.
Just tagging on that, I've done some research with assessments that have been done by the EPA in relation to pit sizes and quarry sizes. And the common thread that I saw through those was the monitoring of sound, real-time monitoring of sound. Now, I notice that DEWA and this Shire has not requested that kind of compliance. Is there any reason why we haven't gone that path with the situation where it is on the hill and now three noise receptors there, 2 pits and a glamping centre? Why we haven't requested real-time monitoring?
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. We've had this discussion some time ago, actually, and from memory, and I'll actually get Cecilia to add some more to this, is that the timing of the noise monitoring was sometimes a bit of an issue. I guess the onus, again, is always on the applicant, and the onus is also on the applicant if there's a noise complaint. So live noise monitoring is made by the nearest receptors on, daily, hourly. I'm not sure, Cecilia, if you have any more to add to that?
Through you, Madam President, I've just, they are going to provide they have provided a noise management plan, and they still need to comply with the noise regulations as well. So that's all information that I have. The noise management plan is attached. I can't remember everything that's there off the top of my head, but it has been referred to DEWA, and it has been considered by the acoustic division or noise regulators. So it has been referred to them, and that's all I can answer.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry,
just in response to that. I do understand what you're saying, but both those departments didn't do any monitoring or any examples themselves. They were relying on Herring Storer's computations, so that's why I'm questioning this.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Councillor Davey?
I noted that there was some setbacks discussed in the report. Was there consideration given to setbacks from the tributaries that lead into the Preston River?
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. If I may direct that one to the Principal Planner.
Thank you. So my understanding is the lines that you can see on that map above Gary, those are basically the, where there is some creek lines, and my understanding is from the stormwater management plan that there won't be any impact because they are going to create some temporary basins. So the answer is if they do deal with their stormwater properly, there shouldn't be any impacts.
Thank you. Councillor Shand?
Sorry, John. In relation to breaching and non-compliance, you've used local law, and I just wondered, is there any remediation or any process? I know they're under EPA as well, but as we said, that would require it to be operational and then a complaint lodged. It's pretty light on to have a $250 fine under the local law when they're carting gravel, the cost of gravel. So the question is there any other form of remediation or breaching or fines, or are we just going to stick with the 2017 local law that's quite light on?
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Director of Operations?
Thank you, Madam President, if I may. The local laws are adopted by council, is that the right way to put it? So we could review that, if you like.
Thank you, Director of Operations. CEO Hunt?
Just in relation to that, any local law is still subject to a law of the state. So we don't have carte blanche to do our own thing. There will still be limitations in terms of what you can do in relation to that local law, in terms of fines and actions. So we just need to be, don't see it as an automatic panacea, because it may not provide it. I don't want people to get caught with that thought.
Thank you, I understand that. I'm just looking at the potential for breaching and lack of compliance that doesn't send a message. And unless we are operational and you've got the EPA to fall back on, then you'd be requiring logs and monitoring, which we don't have.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Councillor Bailey?
Through the Chair, Vivian, would you be able to, I don't know whether it's in here or not, but can Council get issued with a copy of the noise management plan, please?
Your question is, can we be issued
Can Council
with
receive a copy of the noise management plan? I don't know whether it's in here, I may have missed it.
Director of Operations?
Thank you, Madam President, if I may. Councillor Bay, just for your convenience, the noise management plan is attachment 9.1 in brackets 1.3.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Davey?
I just need to pull it up just a moment. So did the Shire Planning Office consider a condition under 3.15p of the Extractive Industry Local Law requiring the licensee to furnish an annual surveyor's certificate to ensure that materials have not been extracted beyond the allowable 1 metre in the development application, or potentially beyond the 10 metre native vegetation exclusion zone in this case?
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Director of Operations?
Thank you, Madam President. If I may just confer with Cecilia, is that a specific requirement, or is it embedded in the licence requirements?
It would be a licence requirement. And I'm just having a quick read. If it's one of the conditions, I think it is. They need to submit at least a progress report on the 31st of December, detailing progress of the pit over the previous 12-month period. So this is, the licence conditions is in B. You'll see A refer to all the development approval conditions and B the licence conditions. So before we can grant the licence, they need to comply with all their development approval conditions. And then as part of the of condition E under B, that requires a site survey plan, which is to address the level changes as well, so that we can see how much they have removed and how much and what areas they need to start rehabilitating. So
does it give that level of detail, confirming that you have not exceeded the 1 metre excavation depth?
we can definitely ask it as part of that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Shand?
Yeah, is there anything in the licence that requires the knowledge of the expertise of those who are, one, cutting the land across the contours, and secondly, is it done in line with engineers or are they just contractors? Because we're trying to mitigate stormwater issues as well.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Director of Operations?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just actually having a look at the conditions for Part B. Condition C, Cecilia? Or
Are we talking about this stormwater plan? That concern with the stormwater was that there would be a stormwater management plan, and that's actually attachment 1.2 to this, to all of your attachments. And yes, it would be someone on a bulldozer doing the work, but still considering what the requirements of the various plans that they have prepared. So the operator would need to manage the site in line with all these reports that they have provided. And one of them will be the stormwater management, and then weed management and dust management. So all those attachments together would form the way of how they would operate on this site. Yeah.
Councillor Shand, does that answer your question?
Not really, because I've had a look at those and we still don't know, because we've seen Catalano's referred to in one document and Edward Stroud in another, and Westwall Holdings. So I'm just wondering who is going to be managing or ensuring that this site is cut correctly.
Thank you, Councillor Shand. CEO Hunt?
The conditions that are applied to both the planning approval or the development application and the licence can prescribe all kinds of things. You cannot prescribe who the contractor is going to be, but at the end of the day, the owner is responsible for what happens on that site, irrespective of who carries it out. So at all times, the applicant will be responsible for what happens on the site. If there is action that is taken that is not in compliance with either the development application, the initial action would be against that individual or that company, that corporation, and then be up to them to take their separate action against anyone else that has caused the problem for them. So what happens on your site is what the action is, unless if it was a building, then would be a building licence. But this is not about building licence. The extraction licence is in the name of the applicant, which is the owner of the site.
Thank you, CEO Hunt.
So what you're really saying is that if they tick all the boxes on an application, they could be the dodgiest operators out and it won't matter.
I can't possibly answer that question.
Yeah. Yeah, let's stick to questions and not opinions. Councillor Glover.
Yeah, my question follows on from that in regard to the $20,000 cash bond referred to as safeguard measures. Does that mean that if there are concerns or, because it sounds like there could potentially be things that could go wrong with the contractors and what, and I understand that the applicant becomes the responsible person for that, but is a $20,000 cash bond enough to rectify things that could potentially go wrong? And does it also include, if there were fines or things like that, does it come out of that cash bond, or is it a separate part about it? So can you explain to me what would cover the safeguard measures out of that $20,000 cash bond?
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. Just reading the conditions that we've placed and relative to the bond, Councillor Glover. The bond is specifically for proposed rehabilitation measures, monitoring, maintenance and completion criteria as contained in the applicant details. So to answer your question, no, it's not for those other items.
May I just
Thank you.
ask a follow-on question to that? So
Councillor Glover.
would that mean that if there were complaints received or there were concerns to be addressed and the Shire were notified about that, would it include their time for going out, making an inquiry or an investigation? Would it include their time for that, or is that just something that our Shire provides free of charge because this proposal's in our area?
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, it's actually part of our service. So it's not an extra fee unless it's specifically scheduled or a statutory fee.
Thank you.
Can I ask just one little part of that follow-up question to that? So potentially, if things weren't compliant and there were things that were concerning, or there were, contractors that weren't, if we had concerns with the applicant and what's happening in this proposal, then it could potentially take a lot of valuable time and money away from the projects that our Shire really want to be doing. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
The answer to that is yes. And we would obviously, in that instance, and we've done this recently where there's been a compliance issue, we would address that with council and seek budget or advice as to what action should be taken and how we would do it, particularly if it's significant.
Thank you, Director of Operations. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Just a quick one, I think. Understand this is designed to be done in stages and progressively rehabilitated as the stages progress. What I can't see in the documentation is, so obviously where the gravel itself is being stockpiled up to 9 metres high, obviously isn't a part that's going to be extracted because that's where it's going to be stockpiled, so that area won't need rehabilitating. Can you clarify if each stockpile will be cleared and moved on before the next section is actually commenced?
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Director
Madam
of
President,
Operations.
if I may, yeah, I sort of tried to allude to that in my intro actually, because I asked that question myself today. So each extractive area, so 1 to 6, and this is also part of the response to the visual impact, only one extractive area can be mined at any one time. But just understanding that there will be a dovetail from, say, extractive area 1 to extractive area 2.
Sorry,
Thank you,
can
Director
I
of
just clarify
Operations.
on that one? So we are saying that obviously, yes, there'll be that period in between, but at no point essentially are we going to end up with more than one stockpile of gravel. Okay, potentially at the beginnings of a second one while one's being cleared, but we're not going to end up with 6 separate piles of stockpile because those areas aren't being mined at that stage and that area doesn't need rehabilitating under the stockpile. I just want to clarify that, yeah, we're not going to end up with 6 stockpiles of 9 metre high gravel at any point. It is going to be cleared before we sort of progress, ideally. Well, dovetailed, as you put it.
Director of
Madam
Operations.
President, the conditions preclude them from doing 6 extractive areas at the same time. So to answer your question, if they breach the conditions and do 6 stockpiles, that could happen and we would take action obviously under guidance. But the conditions here are set so that there's only one extractive area at a time. So within that extractive area, just to sort of go a bit further, could they have more than one 9 metre pile of gravel? Yes, that's possible, but it would be contained within, say, if they start in stage 1, in that stage.
Yeah, sorry, but again, I just want to really push the point here that so then they can't do more than one extracting area at one time, but does that mean that the first area needs to be cleared and, before they can start, because they're not actually extracting. By the time they've got a stockpile done, the extraction's finished, they're just stockpiling. So I want just to clarify that, yeah, they need to be working towards clearing that whilst they're starting on the second stockpile, essentially, in the second area.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Director of Operations.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Councillor Shand?
How does that then work in with lot 10? So if you've got this happening, how do we do then lot 10 at the same time? I'm really desperately trying to get my head around how we can have 2 extraction sites working and not have noise issues, number one. But secondly, 3 to 4 weeks crushing screening, that's on this site. So what's happening to lot 10? Because they're both on the same time period and they both have similar framework for when they crush and screen and stockpile. How do these 2 work together in the same time period?
Thank you, Councillor Shand. Director of Operations?
If I may, Madam President, we have addressed that with a condition, particularly to the noise, where we've conditioned it so that both extractive industry licences cannot be used simultaneously. So if they're working on one of the extractive industry areas and creating noise, they cannot be doing the same on the other lot. And I think my principal planner would like to add to that, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam President. That condition that Ross is referring to specifically relates to the crushing and the screening. So there is a condition which we've recommended that if crushing and screening is operating or happening on lot 10, that it's not also operating on this lot. And we think that that's a way of dealing at least with the crushing and screening. Other operational matters might be more difficult to control, but at least with crushing and screening, that is a recommended condition.
Thank you for that. Councillor Glover?
Can you, maybe it's just my understanding, when you say a recommended condition, does that mean that it's recommended for us to approve it as a condition, or it's just recommended to them as a condition?
So the conditions are recommended conditions by officers, and these are for council to consider. And if you agree with them, then you can...
Then they become a condition. I don't know if we've had an answer to Councillor Shand's question, though. Will there be concurrent activity on both sites for mining, for the extraction, not the crushing? The question was around extraction.
Yes, yes.
There will
It's
be.
highly likely that both of them will be ripping the land, but it's up to the developer to decide how he would want to manage it, but it can happen. There's nothing in here that says that they cannot do it, but crushing and screening we have suggested.
Thank you. Councillor Davey?
Was real-time monitoring to confirm that there's no cumulative exceeding, so no cumulative impacts of noise exceeding the 45 dB or whatever it was? Was real-time monitoring discounted due to cost impacts, or is it not something that we've asked for in the past? I was just wondering what the reasoning behind, no verification of the modelled outcomes in real time.
Thank you, Councillor Davey.
It's not something that we usually condition, and I suppose we need to think about, matters that can potentially as well be where we over-condition, or where we open ourselves up to be taken to SAT with certain conditions. We need to have to be able to substantiate why that condition is there and have a good reason as to why we think it's needed, or if council have a reason why a condition is needed that we might not have thought of, that is also fine, but I suppose it needs to be a planning related matter, and you would need to be able to measure it to see whether it's being contravened or not.
Councillor Davey?
In light of that balance that you're trying to manage between managing impacts and also providing reasonable conditions that aren't likely to trigger escalation to SAT, Could you summarise for us some of the things that you see as improved conditions in this application compared to the previous application? So the $20,000 bond, is that the same between the two of them? Is there anything that you see as an improvement from the point of managing impacts in this application compared to the previous application?
Thank you, Councillor Davey.
My observation in dealing with the previous application is that there's a lot of conditions that is very difficult for an officer to make sure that this applicant is going to comply with it, because it's based on a lot of reports that needs to be amended in certain ways. And as an officer, I would need to consider, have those management plans been amended appropriately? Are they now acceptable? So it's really a very difficult proposal to go through to tick all those boxes. Where this proposal, and I understand the intent of the applicant, his consultant in this case, was to amend all those documents up front so that what's in the report is the ones that form part of the approval, with maybe additional conditions to address further matters. And that's the basis for having allowed or provided time for the applicant to amend his documents. It's to provide that full picture to council, so that there's not a very big responsibility on an officer to go through and make sure that we now have ticked all those boxes. That for me is looking at this proposal that's different from the previous one, and just thinking about the times of going back and forward to the applicant to amend certain documents, because it's all about changing the stages, it's changing the site layout and plans, and it's difficult to miss something. So hopefully what we have now is a better outcome than with the previous proposal.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Do we feel ready to debate the issue next week? Thank you. And thank you, Director of Operations and Principal Planning Officer, for very comprehensive answers. Moving on to 9.1.2, the revision of Local Emergency Management Committee, LEMC, meeting schedule. Do councillors have any questions? Thank you. Item 9.1.3, the Indigenous Yarning Circle project. Do councillors have any questions? Councillor Glover? Councillor Glover?
I'll just note that there are other people who are contributing to this particular project, and I also note that funding has been carried forward through the Shire's budgeting process since 2021. Does that equate to the money just being there? It's always been allocated in the budget, and why, if it's already been approved back in 21, why is it that we're approving it again now?
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Operations. Oh, no, sorry. Is it?
I can take it.
Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. If I may, Councillor Glover, this was actually just to be quite transparent with it. The money, in fact, it's almost just one word different. The money was actually quarantined, as you've noted. It was donated, and it was quarantined. I'm just looking for the word. Mural, Indigenous mural project. If we just took out mural and said Indigenous project, then we're using it for the same purpose. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Director of
So
Operations.
the money's just been sitting in the budget, but it's come from other sources. It's not actually like ratepayer money. It's just been sitting in the budget for that particular purpose.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Davey?
Yeah, I was just looking for a little bit of clarification. So when you look at the report and you go to the consultation section, it says that consultation it's been collaboratively developed with the following stakeholder being Donnybrook District High School. However, earlier in the report it talks about collaboration with local Indigenous people and elders, and I just wanted to get some clarification where you say like the project's been delayed because it's been hard to get that consensus with local Noongar people. Could you just confirm that the consultation has included Noongar people and we do have a consensus?
Thank you. Councillor Davey, Director of Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. If I may, I can confirm that the consultation is carried out because I was actually at the yarn when we talked about it. What we don't have is that formalised. It certainly has been discussed. It certainly is the preference. It seems to be warmly welcomed. So the only formal consultation is with the high school, in particular because we're using their site. So we actually had a yarn just down on the river with the locals, elders, and it was actually quite good fun to talk about what it meant to them as well. So, candid consultation is probably what we've had.
So
Thank you, Director. Sorry. Councillor Davey.
So informal consultation has been undertaken. There seems to be a support. Yeah, great, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions on item 9.1.3? Okay. Moving on to 9.2, Director of Finance and Corporate. 9.2.1, Statement of Financial Activity Report at the 31st of May 2024. And may I say, this is a stunning financial report. Would you like to speak to the report, Tim?
Thank you, Madam President. It's a stunning report. Never in my 20 plus years of local government has that ever been described that way. So congratulations to the Manager of Finance. I would say this, I think this is just the start of reporting. I think hopefully next month there'll be even greater detail reporting on the trends for councillors to keep track of.
Well, that's wonderful, because to see those words around the variances and things is it's very welcome. So thank you, Manager of Financial Services. Well done. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Glover.
No criticism, just asking. Page 4, less current liabilities. So that's provision for annual leave and provision for long service leave as well. Does that money end up going into the reserves account? Where does that money end up sitting after it's been on this page? Where does the money go?
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
I might ask the Manager of Financial Services if she could answer that. It's a very specific financial question. Oh no, it's actually a very good question. Page 4.
Okay. Come down. Yeah, that's page 4. So if you go up a little bit, if you're looking at the provision for annual leave, those two figures at the top, the 441,310 and the 463, yeah. So they're items sitting in the balance sheet. So every year we do a journal and recognise the current expenditure for the current year that then gets expensed through the schedules and the operating statement. So that is the value of what is actually owed. So so every year there'll be an adjustment. New people come in, other people might take their leave, people transfer. So then it's adjusted based on each person. There's a probability and a percentage, and that's how it's factored and calculated through. Sorry, does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. So that's an amount on paper about how much we should be setting aside for those particular...
Well, that's how much, based on the probabilities and the calculations, that the Shire would owe the employees at the moment for their annual leave and their long service leave. There also is, it's not probably showing there, there is also a a provision if, say, someone's transferred from another shire and they've got, you know, a significant liability to come in. We also do recognise income for that potential income. So if that person's, you know, been somewhere else for 9 years, they hit the 10-year and then we have to pay them, well, then we do seek a reimbursement from other councils for their component of that liability.
Thank you, Manager of Financial Services. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you, Belinda. Did you have a question, Peter? Sorry, Councillor Goobler.
Just in relation to the, I think they've just brought in the risk management of the thing, and the likelihood and consequence and the risk rate. Is that that's a new thing that's come in, but in what relation does that have bearing on the accounts?
Thank you, Councillor Goobler. Would you like to answer that question, CEO Hunt?
Each report that comes through from the council, we try to identify some of the risk issues around that specific report, but it relates to that report, not the overall financials of the local government. So this is just relating to this particular monthly report and identifying whether there are specific issues in what is reported. Nothing more, nothing less at this stage. More details on that will be coming through. There's a new style financial report, which hopefully we'll have out a format to you by the end of the week, which was much more detailed as an approach for the financials. And that will be, I guess, phase 2 of the improvement in the financial reporting of what you see as elected members.
Thank you, CEO.
Yeah, just the reason I asked was we've been told of it, like the asset management and all those things are potential risk to the financial bearing, and whether that will highlight that area of being a high risk and all that. That's sort of the question related to.
That will be in the annual report rather than the monthly financial. This is just talking about what's transacted in the current month, not overall. The next edition of the asset management plan will raise, and you've already seen, some of you, many of you, some very significant issues with our asset management plans and asset management financing. And this exercise actually was in part the reason that some of those issues got flagged up.
Thank you, CEO Hunt. Any further questions? Moving on to 9.2.2, the schedule of accounts paid for the 31st of May. Tim, would you like to speak to this? Or is it no? Any questions, councillors? Councillor Glover.
I've got a couple of questions. So my first one is just in regard to the credit card payments. Thank you for listing them. I think it's a really great thing. But is this all of the credit card entries for this month? It would allude to being only one credit card. How many credit cards does our council or our staff members, how many are there in existence?
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Finance and Corporate.
4? It's 4 credit cards.
Thank you.
So yes, that would cover all credit card transactions for that month.
Councillor Shand.
Just on that, are we going to be making a move towards best practice as listed by the Auditor General in relation to the reporting on credit cards?
Can you clarify what
it was divided into who held them, what amounts were spent, and on a line basis refer back to each individual business unit. That's my understanding.
CEO Hunt.
The commentary was around large organisations who have lots of credit cards. There's only 4 credit cards. I've had a credit card since being here, and I think the transactions have been rent or accommodation costs. That's it. Other transactions, because I get to sign all of them off other than my own, essentially around occasionally fuel, where someone has travelled and has not been able to access the depot. Facebook, or Meta as it's now called, accounts, and some standard payments like that. Perhaps Manager Finance might flag up if there's any others, but there's very limited transactions occur, and that's why they're identified as they go. The only thing that's not there is who's got the credit card, but someone asked the question, we can soon tell you who it is.
So would that mean that we're just going to leave it the way it is, or could we move towards doing it with more transparency?
Well, I think you've got the transparency now. Every transaction is there, so I don't think there's anything more that you can give. The only thing I would suggest is what I'm used to, is the credit card of the CEO goes to the Audit and Risk Committee. But in this case, you're going to see, well, in my time, very little. But you can always do that as part of your transparency. Lots of local governments, and I think what they were referring to, the Auditor General just have recoup of credit card. And it's a fixed amount. It doesn't necessarily list all the transactions. You're actually getting the transactions listed.
And on that note, I attended the chair of Audit Committee forum. It's an annual forum during the month, and there was some concern about putting out a lot of detail of the credit card charges because there was fraud happening. People would pick up those details and then use it to defraud, even not just credit cards, but also the transaction reports. Have a look at what we're paying out and the frequency and amount, and they were picking it up and billing councils for similar
Can I add that, that I know that this leads on to some of the concerns that I had raised earlier, and what I was requesting was a reconciliation of the credit cards. So I imagine that there would be a monthly reconciliation that's actually done, not actually producing the statements of the credit cards, because that would lead to fraud. But my question was around, can we actually have in the attachments the reconciliation document that's actually provided?
Thank you, Councillor Glover. CEO Hunt?
I'll take that offline because, quite frankly, that scares the hell out of me in terms of that sort of documentation being circulated in other hands.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's Councillor
I-
Glover,
yeah.
just wait, please. Yes, thank you.
Just point out that the last tranche of the local government legislation review did change quite significantly the credit card reporting. So what's happening now is reflective of those changes. Before, you didn't have to necessarily report individually on credit cards, so now that happens. So what's been done now is in accordance with the local government legislation.
Thank you. Manager of Finance and Corporate. Councillor Glover?
If I may continue to ask some questions on this statement. I note that there is an exit payment for Unit 3 Preston Village for $269,119. I'm just curious about that particular payment.
Thank you, Councillor Glover. Director of Finance and Corporate, would you like to reply? Would you like to come to the microphone, please?
The amount was $269,119.30, and it's EFT 28571.
Keep going down.
Page 4.
Sorry? Yeah. So where, okay. Yeah. So when the existing resident leaves and the unit is sold, it's the exit payment for the outgoing resident, less any costs that would be involved in refurbishing the units and their amenities fees and reserve transfer contributions. So if the unit, I don't know exactly how much that unit was, but say if the unit was, I don't know, say $300,000 and we withhold a certain amount for the renovations and the reserve contributions, then they get paid the balance of the funds because they're exiting the unit and then the new people will be coming in.
So at some point we get paid
Income?
and an income of, and the income would be say, like you say, like $300,000, and then
Depending on
we
what the
pay
unit sold.
back the other part.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So
Yep.
you will see there's an income received and then that's the expense for the outgoing resident.
It's very tricky for us to see it because we don't see the income. We only see the
Oh, but it's in the
outgoings.
statements, but yeah, yep.
Thank you, Manager of Financial Services. I have a question. I've got a question
Sorry.
from
Do you wanna go
Councillor
first?
Mitchell. In relation to current liabilities, are these current liabilities cash-backed with a term deposit quarantining that amount? Director of Finance and Corporate?
Which current liabilities is she referring to?
All current liabilities.
No.
Thank you. I think the answer to that question is that it should be offset by current assets, and in the event we ceased
Yes.
business tomorrow, we would be liquidating and things would
Yes.
be paid out. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bailey.
Through the chair, those units, are they still working under the system they started at where whatever price you pay for them, you're guaranteed to get back no matter what the market does?
I'm not fully across the lease agreements, but I think there was the existing lease agreements that had those terms, and then there was some new lease agreements that were for the new residents. So there is, I think, a hybrid of the two agreements.
So I believe there was 3 built after that, but the situation was if you paid $300,000 for it, the market dropped, which it did, we were still guaranteeing we were paying $300. I suppose this one's that system, is it?
Depending on the units.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Not all units are under that agreement. I think the existing units were, but then you've got the new units and they have a different arrangement.
Is there any way
Director of Operations.
Yeah, can we just take that on notice? Sorry, because I'm not.
Sorry, Director of Finance and Corporate would like to add to that.
I think we should take that question on notice. I think that's quite a lot of
Yeah.
information there that we need to provide, because it's a question about those specific units.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Gubler? No? Thank you. Okay. Moving on to 9.2.3, the Great Southern Care Company Proprietary Limited lease assignment. CEO Hunt, would you like to speak to that report?
Thank you, Madam President. This is a matter that's being reported to the council under the existing arrangement, the lease that exists for the lodge. They have an automatic right to transfer from one entity to another. The company has paid for the legal costs for us to have the agreement independent of their lawyers reviewed to make sure that there are no impacts on the Shire, and that information is provided to you. This is the company that has I think nearly 30 of these types of units. They have been operating the Tuia Lodge for at least 4 or 5 that I'm aware of. There haven't been any issues subsequent, or from a lease point of view, subsequent to the transfer. And this is really just seeking to advise the council of the change.
Thank you,
Happy to
CEO
take
Hunt.
questions.
Any questions? Councillor Glover?
Can I just confirm that I've got that understanding correct? What this is about is it's the name of the leasee is changing. The corporation is changing either name, or the corporation's changing, because it was Hall and Pryor.
Yep.
And now it's changing to Great Southern Care Company. Is it a different company,
Thank you,
or is it a
Councillor
change of
Glover.
name? Thank you.
It's essentially Hall and Pryor have a whole series of companies that run these entities. They have one entity which is what's running Tuia Lodge and one other, and they're moving them all into this other group. And if well, you probably know better than the rest of us what's happening in that sector at the moment. There are lots and lots of compliance issues. So I imagine they're moving this across to reduce some of the implications of the compliance issues. As I say, the lease allows the transfer to occur. So the first question we posed to the lawyers, is there anything that we could do? And the answer is no, provided that they are transferring to an appropriate entity, then it provides for it in the lease document that was signed.
Thank you, CEO Hunt. Any other questions? Councillor Davey?
Firstly, I apologise, I had a lapse in concentration when you were talking because I was looking at the document at the time. Did you say whether or not they're signing up to the new property management framework?
No, this is a pre-existing lease,
Okay.
which has been signed off. Yeah, they're not part of the PMF, no, separate to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. 9.2.4, the desktop valuation for lot 501 on deposited plan 72099, 41 Bentley Street, Donnybrook. CEO Hunt, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. If there's going to be any questions on the desktop valuation, then I'll suggest that we go into behind closed doors. I'm sure you will all recall that there was a request from the Donnybrook Medical Service to acquire the land. One of the resolutions that was carried, as was listed in the report, was to investigate the opportunity for that land to be acquired by the Shire. We pursued that with Landgate. This is identifying what the position is and that they are prepared to sell the site to the Shire. My advice is that any consideration to that shouldn't be done until there is a business plan which addresses the issue. And I've had some conversations with people about what that might cost. And I'm recommending that the CEO, whoever they are, be authorised to prepare that business plan and progress the matter. In essence, this gives a potential outcome which achieves the desire of the council in terms of the medical precinct. It overcomes a problem with it being Crown land vested in the Shire and would enable the Shire to acquire the site in its own right, i.e. in fee simple. And it then separately can deal with the other issues in terms of the medical centre or other things to occur on the site. And therefore I have recommended, as I've listed in the report.
Sorry. Thank you, CEO Hunt. Sorry. Any other questions? Councillor Shand?
I do have a question, but I'll email it.
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Glover?
What is it, with the business plan, what kind of information is likely to be entailed in a business plan with regard to this?
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
All of the details of the site, the potential to acquire the site, how it would be acquired, how it could be held, what some of the opportunities were in the longer term for the site. So essentially, there's a standard format for business plans. So it'd cover off all of the sorts of things you would expect to have before the local government entered into a transaction to acquire something. So in other words, why are we doing it? What is it? How is it going to be dealt with?
Financial impact.
Yeah, financial impact, where is it? And what are the opportunities in the longer term?
May I?
Thank you.
No.
Councillor Glover?
Do we have the expertise within our council or our Shire staff to be able to prepare that report?
Thank you, Councillor Glover.
I don't believe so. I don't. Even if you had the expertise, my advice is you should, with transactions like that, get external expertise to do it. You just set the parameters of what you want so that you don't pay what I would call over the odds. There are people who are well versed in this process and do it regularly. So that's why I've recommended the way I have.
Thank you. Councillor Shand.
Just so I'm on the same wavelength, could this then be considered part of asset optimisation?
Thank you, Councillor Shand.
Without giving too much away, absolutely.
Any further questions? Okay. Item 9.2.5 is the group valuation and land policy. Director of Finance and Corporate, would you like to speak to this?
Before we do that, Councillor Goobler and Councillor Mitchell declared a financial interest. So they need to be part. Yeah.
Councillor Mitchell. We're just going to close you off for a moment.
Sorry, it took me a while to turn the mic on. Mine was impartiality, not financial.
Okay, you can stay.
Oops, dropped out. Yep, you there? Hello?
Yes, you can stay.
Yeah, mine was impartiality.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you.
Would you like me to talk to you?
Is CEO Hunt coming back, or we'll just keep going, shall we? Okay. Director of Finance and Corporate, thank you.
Thanks, Madam President. So, councillors will remember this issue came about because there was an application from a landowner for group rating, and council, as part of its consideration of that, requested that, so I guess deferred that application and requested that staff come back with a group valuation and land policy. So we've done that, but what we've done is we've given council a couple of options, mainly to save some time, because if we presented a policy and then council rejected that policy, that would then delay it by another month or two. So we put forward the two options. One is identical ownership, which is essentially in line with the recommendation that was provided a few months ago with that application. And that's the recommendation in this item, is for council to adopt that. But we also prepared a slight variation to that policy, which is called common ownership. So I guess would allow council to look at that policy if it so wished. And then part 3 really says that whatever policy council was to adopt, the matter of determining applications such as the one from Mr Fry would just become an operational matter that the CEO would, would take responsibility for and delegate down to the appropriate staff. So essentially, there's two policies there for council to consider. We've recommended the identical ownership model, but we put forward the other model in case council wants to go down that path.
Thank you, Director of Finance and Corporate. Councillor Lindeman.
Thank you. Through the chair. In adopting a group valuation, has it been assessed, sort of the financial implications of how that would look for our shire?
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Director of Finance and Corporate.
Thank you, Madam President. So a couple of issues. One is we don't really know what the take-up would be. It might depend on which option council adopted. But the other thing is that if this happens by 1st of July, there's really no impact, because basically if somebody gets a rate discount through this, other ratepayers will meet the difference. If there was applications during the course of a year, there would be an impact on council's rate revenue for that year.
So could I just check that for a minute? You're saying that the, I guess the slack is picked up by other ratepayers. So we are considering passing what we may miss in one area onto other ratepayers. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. Director of Finance.
That's correct. If it's done, by the 1st of July, around that time. If it's an interim rate proposal during the middle of the year, council would forego the rates for that year, or forego the savings that the landowner would accrue by group rating.
Thank you, Director of Finance and Corporate. And that I'm right in that, can I ask a question too? Am I right in my understanding that if we reject this recommendation, status quo would remain? Nothing would change?
Madam President, it would depend on if you rejected it and adopted the other policy, or whether you just rejected it and didn't have a policy. I guess that I'd have to clarify what you meant by that. Currently, there is no policy at all.
Okay, thank you. I need to read some more then. Any other questions? Councillor Davey?
I can see here you've done some consultation with the Shires of Dardanup, Manjimup and Wagen for information on the way that they approach group valuation policies. Could you give us a little bit of information that you got from that consultation? So what those other shires were doing?
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Director of Finance and Corporate.
It does vary. So some of the shires, essentially out in the wheat belt, where there's large farms with different family members that they're operated as a single entity, they've essentially gone the common ownership policy route, because those large sort of conglomerate type farms tend to be operated as a single entity. But shires such as Manjimup and such, they tend to go the identical ownership because it's generally smaller units of land and not generally, I guess, farmed to the same degree. So it's up to the individual local government, the council. Landgate's policies really are aligned more to the identical ownership, but they do respect the right of councils to implement their own policy, and they'll essentially go by that policy.
Thank you, Director of Finance and Corporate. Any more questions? Item 9.2.6, Review of Policy EXE CP7, Organisational Risk Management. Director of Finance and Corporate, would you like to speak to that? Oh. We should note, I haven't noted for the minutes that Councillor Gubler left the room prior to that last item. And noting now that Councillor Gubler has returned to the room. Okay, item 9.2.6, Councillor Gubler, Review of Policy EXE CP7, Organisational Risk Management. And Director of Finance and Corporate is about to speak to that item.
Thanks, Madam President. So this is the policy that was presented to the last meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. And essentially, it's one part of a suite of risk management documents. So this is the first, which is developing or reviewing the current policy on risk management. There will be other stages in that process with a risk management framework and conducting some financial management reviews and statutory compliance internal control reviews. So essentially this is the first plank in that process. It did go to the Audit Committee and so it's now been presented to Council as a recommendation from the committee.
Thank you, Director of Finance and Corporate. Councillor Davey?
As I alluded to earlier in the meeting, I wasn't present at the last Audit and Risk Committee, but I am a member of that committee. I was very interested to see the work that the Shire was doing in this space, given my points made in relation to the Department of Health water monitoring at a previous meeting. I just wanted to foreshadow that I have raised some issues and queries and suggested some alterations to the policy through an email to the broader Audit and Risk Management Committee, and I have met with Tim to discuss these. We have not had another special meeting to discuss these issues. Haven't resolved my queries, and therefore I wanted to foreshadow that I will be requesting a deferral of this item, or moving to defer the item at the meeting next week. So I wanted to foreshadow that motion.
Who would like to respond to you? Are you happy for me to respond?
And I?
Oh, okay.
Can
Yep.
I foreshadow?
You're entitled to do that, but you probably wouldn't defer it. You'd probably just refer it back to the committee rather than defer it. The wording I would use would be to refer the policy back to the Audit and Risk Committee, and
Thank you.
that could happen.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Just a small one, I suppose. It states in here financial implications nil, but obviously if we're introducing this risk, organisational risk management, is there any consideration around, using specific software or something or other to ensure that this is done properly, I guess, in the background, and therefore, financial implications relating to the implementation of relevant software or anything else?
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Director of Finance and Corporate.
The financial implications on this report purely relate to presenting the policy to council. So if there were future financial implications with purchasing software, that would be dealt with at that time.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick. Any further questions? Councillor Shand.
Sorry, so are we going to then change the committee recommendation from adopts to refers, or?
No, you can't do that because the committee's made the recommendation. What Councillor Davey or someone else can do is, as Tim mentioned, move a motion to either refer the item back for further consideration. Yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor Davey.
A procedural question. In order to refer that back to the committee, do I need to get the support of the committee?
No, you can move that at the meeting.
Any further questions? Councillor Bailey.
Just referring it back to the committee, I wonder if it's going to be faster whether we were able to just call a special meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee to discuss the concerns by Councillor.
I'm sorry, I think I heard that you said, are we going to call a special meeting of the Audit and Risk?
No, just wondering whether to make it, would it be faster if we called at the full council meeting,
I think we'll...
an extraordinary meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee to make a start on this?
Councillor CEO Hunt.
If it's deferred, then it's open to the chair of that committee to call an early meeting of the committee to deal with that particular issue. Yeah. You wouldn't normally call a meeting before the council has formally submitted the committee report before you make any changes. So you wait till that committee report has gone to the council and the council has determined, no, we think that it ought to be further considered, then you do it then.
Thank you, CEO Hunt. Okay, we're moving on to 9.2.7. Proposed redistribution of Western Australia into... Sorry, the proposed redistribution of Western Australia into electoral divisions. Is that correct? Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you. Director of Finance and Corporate.
I thought Councillor, I'm sure most of you didn't read the 120-page Electoral Commission report, so I thought I might quickly summarise sort of why this is happening. I mean, redistributions aren't uncommon. The legislation says they have to be done no less than every 7 years. The difference with this one, this redistribution, is that it's primarily influenced by the fact that WA is getting an additional electoral division. And that's really been caused by WA having a higher population growth than some other states, and so some other states are losing divisions, and so there's only so many divisions in Australia. WA is gaining one, and I think another state's gaining one, and New South Wales and Victoria are both losing one. So obviously what happens there is everything changes when you have to accommodate a new electoral area. So what's happened is the electoral, the distribution committee, I think it's called, the redistribution committee has recommended the creation of a new electorate called Bullwinkle, named after a nurse who lost her life in World War II, I understand. So that encompasses land in the southeast of Perth, so Armidale type region, and then areas to the east of Perth out to Beverley and Northam and such. So that would require land to be transferred from current electoral divisions of Burt, Canning, Durack, Hasluck, O'Connor and Swan. All electorate divisions have to be within a range of plus or minus 10% of a redistribution quota, which isn't based on current population, it's based on population estimated in March 2028. So, you know, they had to do some quite long population projections. So what that equates to is that each electoral area must have the number of electors must be between 117,000 and 125,000 electors. So this presents a challenge to the committee, as some regions have historical and projected population growth and others have much lesser rates of growth. So the electoral division of Forest, of which the Shire of Donnybrook-Ballinup is in and has been in for the whole history of that electorate. So Forest is predicted to have electors within the acceptable redistribution quota projected for March 28, and that's only one of three of the current 15 electorates in WA. So you would normally think that that's good, but the trouble is changes to boundaries of other divisions have like a domino effect and trigger changes to others, and this is what's occurred in the current review, with Canning requiring a reduction of between nearly 6,000 and 14,500 projected electors, and so that requires a number of electors to be transferred out of Canning, including just under 4,000 electors from the Shire of Waroona into Forest. That takes Forest over the 10% quota. Therefore, to meet that, the redistribution committee has recommended that the Shire of Donnybrook-Ballinup go to O'Connor. So, as well as being guided by the quotas, the committee is also required to give consideration to community of interest within the electoral division, means of communication and travel, the physical features and area. And so the committee can only balance the different criteria against each other so far as they affect each electoral division. And they try and achieve the best overall balance. It's not an easy job. And given the primacy of the two numerical requirements, which is the quota, it's almost impossible to satisfy all those criteria to the same extent for every electorate. The draft submission that's in attachment to the item solely focuses on the community of interest, communications and transport links criteria to oppose the proposed transfer of the Shire of Donnybrook-Ballinup to O'Connor. Hope it's sensitively addressed in the draft submission, but councillors have been here a lot longer than I have, so I'm sure if I've missed anything, you will point that out. It isn't recommended that council nominate alternative boundary changes. For one, it's very difficult to accurately project the impacts alternative proposals would have on the projected elector numbers. That task is best left to the redistribution committee. It would also require council to make subjective judgments on the community of interest criteria of other communities, and I assume council wouldn't be appreciative of other local governments making recommendations to move, land in Donnybrook-Ballinup to other electoral divisions. And finally, the submission does make it clear that if the draft submission was endorsed, that the Shire's opposition to being transferred to O'Connor shouldn't be seen as a view towards the member for O'Connor. That member has been in Parliament for 11 years and he served his electorate well, so it wouldn't want to be seen that we had a problem with going there. It's just the community of interest is more aligned to Bunbury and other areas of Forest. That's a summary.
Thank you, Director of Finance and Corporate. Are there any questions? Councillor Lindeman?
Okay, bit confused, but so does that mean, I'm just having a quick look at a map and it's talking about Corrigin, Brookton, Williams, Collie, Boyup, so it's all of that is then going to be the electorate of O'Connor, is that right?
So O'Connor is the biggest electorate
Yeah.
division in the world,
Yep.
my understanding. So they go from, currently, Bridgetown is its westernmost boundary, all the way out, I think I said Esherins in the item, but it's actually all the way
does.
out to Eucla, and then up to Warburton, and then back down the Great Eastern Highway, and then down the Great Southern Highway through Beverley and Brookton. So yeah, it is a huge electorate.
Wow.
All right.
Thank you, Director of Finance and Corporate. Councillor Goobler?
Yes, I just read through the thing there. Is there an avenue to put a submission into that from the Shire here? Is it what I read, or
Yes, that's
to that?
Director of Corporate and Finance. We have got one in the attachments. Yeah.
That's correct, Madam President. So that it's recommending, so a draft submission has been prepared. It's really an objection to the proposals. If council, I think we say in the item that if council doesn't have an objection, you would just move on and not do a submission. But the recommendation is for council to lodge a submission objecting to the transfer to O'Connor.
Thank you. Councillor Goobler?
So just in relation to that, so does individuals are able to put a submission in as well, are they?
They can. Yes. Yes, I think Wendy Trow has submitted an objection as well. Yeah. I think we have another email from Wendy on that topic. Are there any other questions? Okay. Moving on to item 9.2.8, which is the Delegations Register Review. Director of Finance and Corporate, would you like to speak to that item?
So review of delegations is an annual event, an annual requirement. So I will note that most of this work was done before I arrived, so maybe the manager of corporate services would be best placed if there was any questions on the item.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Glover?
My question is loosely related to annual items such as this. How far are we off getting a governance calendar so that we can actually predict ahead what's going to happen with these annual reviews that we will need to be approving?
Thank you. Manager Corporate Services, you just had a promotion.
Hi, thank you. It's just another one of those timing things. It just depends on what's happening at the time, and I'm afraid that one just keeps getting pushed down the list. But however, I do know that it's important to you, so we'll endeavour to try and get something out. We do have a not a corporate calendar, a compliance calendar, which does state every little thing that we are meant to do, and I'm more than happy to share that with you, although it's not going to be very clear or easy to understand. However, that's something that I can share with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Councillor Davey.
Could we just get a brief rundown of the implications of the changes you're proposing?
Thank you. Manager Corporate Services.
Okay, so with 8.16, which is commencement of proceedings, so the implementation of the Public Health Act has been happening now since 2016, and it's been going on for a while. So it doesn't really, there's no really big changes there. It's just the fact that the delegation will now be an authorisation through the CEO. And let me just have a look, include the additional function. Authority to issue an enforcement order or extend the period of compliance with an enforcement order under the Public Health Act. Authority to implement an enforcement order under the Public Health Act. I probably have to refer to the Manager of Development Services. I don't think it's something that we do quite often. Yeah, sorry. These ones really affect Michelle's area, so she will have a lot more detail in regards to.
Thank you, Manager, Development Services.
I'm just going to hold it right in.
Thank you. Those provisions didn't exist before, so the proposed changes to the delegation register is to recognise the changes that are coming with the implementation of the Public Health Act. So it was loosely under the Health Act before, and as Manager of Corporate Services has alluded to, it's not something that we do as a routine, it's something that's a tool if needed.
Is there anything really much with this one that's going to change that from the...
Oh, sure. So just moving on to the other one, I think Emma's tried to do a good job of sort of highlighting the main changes. So this is in relation to changes to the legislation. So the planning and development regulations, as part of the state government's reducing the red tape, have looked at a number of improvements. And we did allude to this last council meeting, if you recall, that with the development application for the house in Argyle, that those types of applications will no longer come to council because it's actually excluded in the regulations. So that's a direct responsibility of the CEO and no longer a council function. So the delegation register is proposed to, I guess, just reflect that change in legislation. I think this one's more around, the next one's about local development plans. The whole purpose of a local development plan is to vary conditions. So if you have a local development plan, you're acknowledging that you are changing the scheme provisions and the R code, so that's why you have one. So we're just trying to say that, we're just trying to not skip a step, but just make it a bit more timely, I guess. And often local development plans are a requirement of subdivision approval, so it's actually a state government requirement. I think the entry inspection stuff was a administration change, and then...
Yeah, so that one, the entry and inspection powers, it was done through the Act before, and now it's just changed that the Act now has given direct delegation, or the Act now specifies that the CEO can do that function, who then can issue a certificate to relevant staff. So it's already in the legislation. So it's no longer given to council, it's given directly to the CEO. So it's just another one of those changes that's come down the line. And the last one is the Audit and Risk Management Committee. And there's just that council may wish to consider the revocation of the delegation, given the fact that the Audit and Risk Committee aren't actually making any decisions. They're only ever referring back to council. So it's sort of null and void. So it's just something for consideration for council to think about.
So
Councillor Davey?
Sorry about that. So when it comes time for us to review the terms of reference for the Audit and Risk Management Committee, you think this is a good tidy up that we can do at that time?
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Manager Financial Services and Manager Development Services. Item 9.2.9, an update on the HJ Jack Dennings Funds, Deed of Indemnity and Release. CEO Hunt, would you like to speak to this?
I won't, because I've done nothing much to do with this other than have a couple of meetings with some gentlemen well known to you all. I have to say Lauren has been diligent in her worked to get this to this stage. I implore you next week to adopt this because it's unfair that whoever follows me has to deal with this issue because it's been around since Adam was a boy or JC played for Jericho in the AFL. I'll pass on to Lauren, and my apologies for the analogy I just used. I'll withdraw it.
Thank you, and through the chair. Yes, so as stated, this has been to council numerous times. It's really just cleaning up the fact that we just, as a risk measure, we just want to make sure that we've got a deed of indemnity and release for the Shire and for any other parties that have been like sort of signing authorities within that. And this will be the end of it. Once this is signed, we can actually formally transfer the funds and then they can start to be used as they were bequeathed for. So,
Thank you, Manager Corporate Services, Finance Manager. Corporate Services. Lauren. Manager Corporate Services. Any questions? Councillor Glover?
I totally understand that this has been going on for a very, very long time. It's come before council many, many times as well. But Messrs Folds and Tuia, are they satisfied with the outcome?
yes, very satisfied. They obviously things take time, like trying to get the ACNC to get their the status from when we signed a trust to the deed of trust for the trustees, and then they had to be become a charitable status. Then it had to go to the ATO to get that, and obviously explaining all those steps can be frustrating for people who don't understand that due diligence needs to be taken. However, we're now at the pointy end. We can, and they've agreed to the fact that the funds for all legal fees should come out of the trust because the money was, the Shire did take it on as a task. So yes, it'll be great to see it all finished up.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Moving on to item 10, elected member motions. We have none. And item 11, new business of an urgent nature. We have none. So getting to item 12, meeting closed to the public. No public readings, so we'll declare the meeting closed at 7:17 p.m. with the next ordinary council meeting to be held on the 26th of June 2024 at 5 p.m. in the Shire of Donnybrook Planning Up Council Chamber.